Tonight, big win.
I would have no problem testifying. I didn't do anything wrong.
A New York appeals court sides with Donald Trump.
How do you plan to secure the bond, and how exactly you're planning to pay the bond?
Well, as they say, I have a lot of cash.
Bill O'Reilly on Trump's latest great escape. Blackmailing America.
If they don't do the things that you've said need to be done, then what?
The flow of migrants will continue.
Mexico's president demands $20 billion a year or else. Wait till you hear what he says about the cause of America's fentanyl crisis. Revolt. Meet the Press silences 50% of America.
We weren't asked our opinion of the hiring, but if we were, we would have strongly objected to it.
Why MSNBC anchors are so upset with their bosses. And the Miami Beach miracle.
Curfews, bag checks, and restricted beach access.
A curfew and crackdown ended the violence of spring break. Homeowners rejoiced. What New York City could learn from Miami Beach. We start with breaking news out of Miami and Los Angeles. A multi-city raid is underway at the homes and possibly the places of business of hip-hop artist Sean Diddy Combs, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Sean Combs. We believe it stems from a lawsuit by his former girlfriend. And here is what's quite interesting. If you look at your screen right now, when you see the officer there with his bulletproof vest, on the bottom, it says Homeland Security Investigations, HSI. They only investigate a very specific set of crimes that possibly involve sex trafficking. Homeland Security agents in Miami and Los Angeles raided Combs' homes. Law enforcement officers took several people out in handcuffs. At one point, there were multiple SWAT teams on site in Los Angeles. We're going to get to all of the news out of Los Angeles and Miami in just a minute. First, we welcome you to the fairest show on television. And as we come on the air this Monday night, Trump keeps winning. Democrats have long said that felony convictions will bury the former president. They've been talking about this since he was first indicted, actually before he was indicted. But again today in court, Trump came out on top. Let's just review the past couple of weeks. Starting with today, a New York appeals court cut his $500 million bond to $175 million. He also received an additional 10 days to put up the money. He could soon access more cash, $3 billion, as Truth Social goes public on the NASDAQ tomorrow. He's leading in all of the 7 key swing states. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis could be thrown off the Georgia case with a new appeal that Trump was allowed to follow. His cases in Washington, D.C. and Florida are both on hold. He won the Colorado ballot case outright at the Supreme Court. The only loss really in recent memory is an April 15th start day for his hush money payment trial that's in New York. He's going to appeal that ruling. There's a lot of reasons to think that perhaps the hush money trial will help him rather than hurt him politically. And the trial will allow him to do what Donald Trump does best. Each day and every day, he successfully paints himself as the victim, a position that does rally his base.
You could have gone back 3 years, more than that. When I left office, all of these things could have been started. And you know why they didn't start it? Because they didn't know I'd be running, and they didn't know how well I'd do.
All right, 225 days until November 5th, and President Trump still leads the Decision Desk HQ average of polls, as you can see there, by about a point. For Democrats counting on the courts to take out Trump, time is running out. And time again, whether you like him or not, Trump keeps winning. Bill O'Reilly is with us, host of the No Spin News, author of the coming book, Confronting the President's No Spin Assessments from Washington to Biden. Mr. O, good to see you as always. Let's sort of start in the beginning. At the top of this. The trial starts April 15th. Is that potentially a win for Donald Trump?
I don't know. I mean, I have to see the depositions in the trial. They're not public, so I don't know what the DA in Manhattan has. I do know that most of the people in his office didn't want to try the case, and I believe that 40 out of the 50 states of the union never would have brought it, remember, more than 75% of American counties voted for Trump last time around, 2020. None of those DAs would have brought the case. However, if they can show, if Bragg can show that Trump himself manipulated his funds to cover up some kind of scandal, a Manhattan jury, and they hate him, that's another real problem for Donald Trump in Manhattan and D.C. People hate him. They might convict him. But if it's going to be Michael Cohen's word, Trump's lawyer who went to prison for fraud and other things, I think Trump would beat that if his lawyers have any skill at all.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Michael Cohen, who's an admitted perjurer who now becomes the star witness for Alvin Bragg. You said an important word, which was jury, which makes this different, right, than the case, the New York Attorney General case against him for the $500 million verdict. On a jury, you just need one person for a hung jury. If we look forward on this, right, and it's not a conviction, as Democrats have told everybody that it's going to be and salivated over, but it's a hung jury or it's an acquittal on these charges, doesn't that change everything? Yeah, it changes, but remember, the testimony is going to be public, and the hate Trump media, which is 90% of it, are going to banner all the things that are said in the courtroom. You know, you said that it was a win today for Trump to get the lower bond. I don't see it as a win. A win for Trump would be get it out of New York State into the federal court system, because this is so obviously a political prosecution. There's no, this real estate thing, again, that wouldn't have been brought anywhere. The other charge, the criminal charge of Stormy Daniels, maybe 10 states would have brought it. But the real estate thing, nobody else would have brought it. If you can get it into the federal system, you have a much better chance of getting this insane thing nullified completely. So, look, all of this does work in the short term for Trump's political profile, because there are independents who say, you know, we really don't like this. But in the long run, it's got to take a toll on a man. Has to. Look, no question that being under this much weight and this much stress and these many investigations take a toll on you. To be fair, I guess being president takes a big toll on you as well, right? And if you want to test for the job, this would be it. Depends what kind of president you are. I don't think Joe Biden's feeling any strain in there. He works one day a week. I mean, he's got the schedule down. Hey, wait a minute, Leland. On BillO'Reilly.com, on the No Spin News, we post his official schedule every blanking day. All right? What did he do today? He had lunch with Kamala Harris. No, he had lunch with Kamala Harris. He had lunch with Kamala Harris. I'm just saying what's on the schedule. Okay, I paid for that lunch, and I object to that. All right? So I don't know, in a serious vein, whether Joe Biden's feeling any pressure when he barely works. Okay. I mean, that's just the truth. Do you think Democrats, and I think that the little micro wins, if you will, or the steps do make a difference. At least when I was in Missouri this past weekend, people were talking about that. Is sort of these incremental wins mean something. It's sort of the continued vindication of Donald Trump, if you will, that they take a lot of, I don't know, solace in, strength in, whatever you want to call it, as voters. Do you think Democrats are desperate yet? I don't think. Yeah, I think they're really, really worried about Joe Biden because things are not going to get any better for him. You know, most politicians have the potential for a comeback. I mean, Trump may make a comeback, as you're saying, if everything goes his way. Biden's not going to make any comeback. He's just going to continue to decline because that's just nature. That's just what's happening. It's not his fault, by the way. I don't blame Biden for his cognitive decline. I blame Jill Biden, absolutely, because I don't think she's doing the country any good. He should have just wrapped it up, said, look, thanks for the 4 years. I'm turning it over to the Democrats. I'm sure they're going to put up a more viable candidate, but I'm just too old to do it.
If you really cared about your country, that's what you would have done.
Fair enough. You talked about the Trump-hating media. There's probably nobody in terms of mass media that hates Donald Trump more than NBC, NBC News, MSNBC. NBC News and MSNBC hired Ronna McDaniel, the former chair of the RNC, and she went on Meet the Press on Sunday. Here she is. Take a listen.
When you're the RNC chair, you kind of take one for the whole team, right? Now I get to be a little bit more myself, right? This is what I believe. I don't think violence should be in our political discourse, Republican or Democrat.
Now, what's interesting is not really her interview, but as you note in your column in the Message of the Day, is the reaction on both NBC and MSNBC. Take a listen.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation.
We weren't asked our opinion of the hiring, but if we were, we would have strongly objected to it.
You know what I'm thinking about, Bill, is NBC News management and NBC Universal. They were the ones who did this. I'm wondering if this wasn't insubordination, right? But this was more of the executives saying we made this hire and then telling their top talent, hey, come out and say things that will appease not the employees, but the viewers of NBC and MSNBC who probably don't like this very much.
All right, Leland, as you know, I am a simple man. So I'm going to keep this in a very simple zone. Ronna McDaniel made a huge mistake by trying to convince electors in Michigan not to certify the electoral vote. It's an enormous mistake, all right? Should never have done it. She did it. She has acknowledged that was a mistake and thrown herself on the mercy of the court by saying, Joe Biden won in a legitimate way. All right. We all make mistakes. But that's not good enough for NBC. No. She has to be canceled. She has to be vaporized. She has to vanish. These are the same people that you'll remember for 2 solid years. The same identical people. Todd, Scarborough, that crew, who convicted Trump and Trump's campaign people for colluding with Russia. They convicted them for 2 years. So shouldn't they be canceled, vaporized? No. If you're on the left and you make a mistake, that's okay. But if you're on the right, you're gone. Now, I'd like to go on Meet the Press next Sunday, Easter, and I'll go to Mass early to get there, and tell, Miss Welker, exactly what I just told you. Because you'll remember that Ramaswamy in the November debate drilled her right between the eyes by saying, you, madam, were one of the principal convictors of the Trump people in Russian collusion. You remember that?
Yeah. I do.
It's a great soundbite. I'm using it tonight on the No Spin News. So that's the hypocrisy in play. One final note. NBC News is a shadow of what it once was. MSNBC's viewership is nothing. 120 million Americans have television sets in the home. They can't even do 2 million viewers in prime time at NBC and never could. I used to beat them 6-7 to 1 when I was doing the O'Reilly Factor. The Today Show has declined. Fallon is third at night. And the reason is that NBC News is openly hostile to any person who is not a liberal. They are sneering. They are condescending. And the management tried to do a little bit to mitigate that. And then the asylum people, because the inmates are running the asylum, surged. How dare you actually give a woman a chance to say her opinion? How dare you? And it's really, really shocking, the whole thing.
Well, I guess what is almost more shocking to me is that it's proof that the inmates do run the asylum, because there hasn't been any shall we say, repercussions. I think you and I both worked in an organization that you didn't shoot inside the tent.
I'm really glad you asked that question. So Vittert and I were at Fox News when Roger Ailes ran the show, okay? And Ailes was a tough SOB. And if anybody, right, even me, who was delivering enormous amounts of money, okay, said to Ailes, hey, you can't hire Shirley, I would have been out on my butt on 6th Avenue in about 30 seconds. But now, you know, it's really frightening what has happened to corporate media. You bet.
All right, Bill, thank you very much. We'll talk soon. Good to see you. Coming up next, more on that breaking news. The Department of Homeland Security has carried out a heavily armed raid on Sean Diddy Holmes, otherwise known as P. Diddy, from Los Angeles to Miami. There's reasons to believe that who's raiding the home, Homeland Security investigations, could have uncovered some really awful stuff. The crimes only the folks you're looking at investigate, and why you need to know when we come back. And James Carville, the raging Cajun who helped Bill Clinton get elected, speaks out. He says Democrats are getting killed because they run by being too preachy, especially the women. Is he right? Continue with our breaking news. Los Angeles and Miami, on both coasts, federal agents swarmed the homes of one of the biggest names in rap and entertainment. As you can see, SWAT teams showed up at mansions belonging to Sean Diddy Combs. P. Diddy is what he goes by. They were raided by the Department of Homeland Security Investigations Group. Combs has faced lawsuits on a number of issues. But according to court documents, he's been accused of rape, sex trafficking, and more. He has denied all the charges. Law enforcement sources confirm the raids are connected to investigations over sex trafficking. You can see what appears to be Diddy's two sons in handcuffs in the yards. This is from Los Angeles, from one of our helicopters there. That's Justin and King Combs. NewsNation national security contributor, former Los Angeles FBI agent Tracy Walder's here. First, NewsNation entertainment reporter Sam Rubin with what we know right now. Sam, a scale of 1 to 10 in Los Angeles of the surprise meter, where does this rank?
Oh, I think this is a 9+. I think it's an extraordinary surprise. This is one of the most elite neighborhoods in all of Los Angeles, the Holmby Hills area, a street called Mapleton. And as you saw from that aerial footage, this is an extraordinary mansion. I'm not a real estate expert, but this is a $50 million home and then some. So we always knew that P. Diddy did well. I don't think people were necessarily aware that he did this well, nor were aware to the extent of the trouble that he must clearly be in. You're seeing this extraordinary estate where neighbors are now telling the media, yes, this was the site of parties, likely debauched affairs. And that's what this all stems from. One lawsuit, there are 5 against P. Diddy as we're speaking right now. Again, he has denied these accusations. But one from a woman who recorded under the name of Cassandra Ventura, was extraordinarily detailed and damning in her accusations of a 10-year relationship where she described effectively being terrorized in a variety of ways. And that may just be the tip of the debauched behavior iceberg. It seems pretty extraordinary to me that HSI would come in effect with military equipment and to simultaneously raid this extraordinary estate here in Los Angeles and another one in Miami that they apparently approached with both boats and vehicles. I mean, it looks like a scene out of a movie, except P. Diddy cast very probably reluctantly as the bad guy in what certainly, at the very least, is extraordinarily damaging to his reputation.
Yeah, that would probably be the understatement. Sam, thank you very much. Tracy Walder with us now. Tracy, I think what struck everybody was the fact that the agents who were raiding these homes were wearing the HSI tags on the back of their bulletproof vests, that the SWAT team was there. How high up does it have to go? How far along in the investigation does it have to be to send SWAT teams to the home of a major celebrity on both coasts?
The short answer to that, Leland, is pretty high, although I'm not surprised that it was HSI who was there. Their prominent role is really to investigate transnational issues, particularly sex crimes and sex trafficking crimes. So it's not surprising at all that this raid was conducted by them. And it's not surprising at all also that this was simultaneous. Typically, if you have someone that has multiple residences, we even did this at the FBI, you have different teams stationed at different properties to go after them and raid them at the exact same time. So that way evidence can be preserved. So I really think by this point, and again, he is innocent until proven guilty, but there is a mountain probably of evidence against him.
Yeah, this is the end rather than the beginning of the investigation, I guess, as things would go. Sean Diddy, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, net worth over $1 billion, Bad Boy Records, 500 million records sold, 38 platinum records as well. I guess, there's that old line, things you never get caught on your first time, drunk driving, cheating on your wife, and the like. The one person we haven't heard about or where he is P. Diddy himself. So how do they time these kinds of raids? Is it they want whoever the target is not to be at any of the homes and they have surveillance on him? What's that play look like?
So that's a really good question, actually, Leland. My guess is they may actually have him in custody, and we just may not see pictures of that because that was done quietly. Or he could be out of the country. It's hard to know. I don't know the various properties that he has, as you mentioned. He's worth $1 billion, so he may not physically be here. However, I think that they decided to conduct the raid, whether they got him or not, because I think there were probably lives at risk and trafficking that was going on, and it needed to stop because people were in imminent danger. Wow. That's why I think it doesn't necessarily matter. It will matter, obviously, in the end that he's caught, but I don't know that it matters right now. And I think that's probably why they decided to do it, sadly.
Yeah, Tracy, thank you. Sam, I want to bring you in. You think about the timeline of the allegations against P. Diddy. Lawsuits allege Combs drugged, sexually assaulted, and videotaped a 19-year-old, all the way through 2003, accused of gang raping a 17-year-old. He was known for having his white party in the Hamptons. He was the next Gatsby, on and on and on. How much are we to believe that Hollywood will, and the Los Angeles celebrity set, looks aside of all those allegations and just enjoys the parties at the nice mansions throughout the years? And does this raid now make him a PNG, persona non grata within the Hollywood elite circles?
Well, I tell you what, the phrase that came to mind as you were sort of reciting that was radioactive. I think people who've attended those parties hope that there is not footage of them attending those parties. And I think it'll be a long time before another party is held. So no, until he is able to mount a more vigorous defense than simply his social media denial that these are untruths and I've sat back while this has happened, I'll defend myself and my family while his sons are being questioned by law enforcement. I think now that he is definitely, this understates it, is on the outs and obviously has significant legal problems. So this is likely towards the end of the legal investigation, but just the beginning of what we will learn about the case, presumably, that's against it.
Yeah, Sam, you make a great point. All the pictures, all the videos, all the people who couldn't wait to get invited to P. Diddy's parties are probably now talking to their lawyers about what they saw, what they didn't see, what they did, what they didn't do. Obviously, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. Sam, thank you very much. Tracy, great point as well. Where is P. Diddy tonight? We'll be back with the breaking news if we get any updates on that. Thank you both. Next, how beer, football, and hamburgers could solve Joe Biden's terrible poll numbers. The warning from a legendary Democrat about where the election is heading and how to solve it. Plus, Miami Beach ended the violence and craziness of spring break in 2 weeks. Could New York learn a few lessons?
Really appreciate how bad Biden's poll numbers are. When you look at them, it's like walking in on your grandmother naked. You can't unsee them, no matter how hard you try.
As only the raging Cajun Democratic strategist James Carville can put it. He was the brains behind Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign. He's the guy who came up with it is the economy, stupid. New polling from CNN proves his point. In 2020, Joe Biden won voters of color in Michigan by 62 percentage points. The latest poll out this week shows that lead down to just 21 points. Carville says he believes the change is happening because there are, quote, too many preachy females leading the Democratic Party. Here now, political analyst Laura Fink, founder and CEO of Rebel Communications. Good to see you. Thank you. All right. I think reasonable people can agree that it was a rather sexist remark, but does that make it wrong?
Well, he thinks we have too many preachy females. It sounds to me like we just might have one too many drunk uncles in the Democratic Party. Biden won women in 2020, 57 to 42. Women are the bedrock of the party, as always. Now, do we need to win men along the margins? Certainly men of color, absolutely. But this looks like a publicity stunt. If you drag a $2 microphone through the bayou, you just might find James Carville. He's great at attracting the media, and that's what this is all about.
Well, fair. Maureen Dowd, though, of the New York Times is the one who wrote it. So I think, you have to give them credit that this is a guy who single-handedly turned Bill Clinton into the comeback kid in New Hampshire. Just in terms of what we're saying in terms of women being the bedrock of the Democratic Party, you look at the women associated with Biden: Jill Biden, Kamala Harris, KJP, Kate Bedingfield, Gina Raimondo, Linda Thomas Greenfield, Jennifer Granholm, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court Justice. So I don't know if you'd say that as a surrogate, but certainly somebody who he appointed. Who is the woman, though, that men outside of the coastal elite, outside of the Acela corridor from Boston to Washington, and outside of Southern California, that men, working class men, relate to?
Well, working class men, Dems haven't won men since Carter. And in 1992, he didn't win men. Clinton didn't win men. So I don't know that you need to blame women and take pot shots at women leaders while we're talking about how do we attract people to the Democratic brand and base, and how do we expand that? This election is going to be won on the margins of young voters. It's going to be won on the margins of voters of color. This is not an election where one group is going to dominate, but it feels like this is an analysis.
Okay. Laura, I get the point that it's going to be won on those margins, but it also is going to be lost on those margins. People, you're entitled to your own opinion, not entitled to your own facts. Right now, in Michigan, voters of color, his lead is 40 points off where he was in 2020. There's a reason for that. What do you, hold on, there's a reason for that. What is your reason? What's your explanation?
The reason is we got to start listening to voters. And I think that's what's missing from Carville's analysis that I really take exception to, is he doesn't have facts behind him. He just has analysis about burgers and beer and football. And I hope that he grabs a beer and watches some football and maybe listens to a few more voters, because that is going to be the path to winning them back before Election Day. Anybody that pretends they have the silver bullet for any demographic group is shining you on. We need focus groups. We need to get out there. We need to start talking to voters.
When you talk to voters, and you talk to voters of color in particular, especially black men, they tell you that there are real issues that they have that speak to beer, football, and hamburgers. I mean, you can make fun of the simplicity of it. I get that, but these are the issues that voters tell us, and certainly the issues that white men tell us are a problem for Joe Biden.
Yes, that white men may tell you, and I'm not the expert on white men, but I will tell you in the data that I've looked at with respect to voters of color, they're bringing up things like a lack of trust in the system, a lack of seeing progress on the issues they care about, really being disenchanted with government generally, and Biden is the head of that government. So there are definitely problems, and I don't deny that, but I do think that we have to look at what those are with clear eyes and not just make things up out of whole cloth. If James Carville has data to back up his assertion that women running the Democratic Party is causing problems, I want to see it. If he thinks that men of color are going to come back when we talk about burgers and beer, show me the data, show me the numbers.
All right. Laura, thank you very much. Good point in terms of show me the data. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Nowhere does the working class elite divide show itself more than in America's fentanyl crisis, the divide between the elites of the Acela corridor and Southern California versus the rest of America. Last night on 60 Minutes, Mexico's president offered some ideas on why the drugs that are mostly made in his country, namely fentanyl, kills so many Americans.
You know why we don't have the drug consumption that you have in the United States? because we have customs, traditions, and we don't have the problem of the disintegration of the family.
The disintegration of the family. It's interesting. Mexico's president is to the left of AOC. He's a borderline Marxist. In American socialists, even democratic socialists, even the AOC folks, tell us that traditional families, traditional values, they don't mean anything. They're terrible. In fact, they're reasons to be scornful. But 80% of Americans know better. They perhaps know what the Mexican president was talking about. 80% of Americans living in swing states rank the fentanyl crisis as very or somewhat important in the upcoming election. That's more than abortion, climate change, or the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. This map shows you why America's elite, the same people who tell you traditional values don't matter, don't really care about fentanyl or families. The deaths center in Appalachia and working class states, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, Louisiana.
People have been desperate. They don't have jobs because of policies, because of administration policies, and they're desperate. I mean, it has been a horrible scourge and really preying. These drug dealers are preying on people who are really desperate in society.
That's Leland Vittert on the program Friday. She's a data scientist with a PhD who studies these trends, also my sister. Customs and Border Protection seized 27,000 pounds of fentanyl at the U.S.-Mexico border last year. That's roughly the weight of a fighter jet. And if dosed correctly, enough to kill 6 billion people. That is, every American 17 times over. The Mexican president admitted to 60 Minutes that he couldn't stop the flow of illegal immigrants. By extension, he could stop the drug cartels if he wanted. That's what he said on 60 Minutes. And he demanded $20 billion to do it. Here's his take.
If they don't do the things that you've said need to be done, then what?
The flow of migrants will continue.
All right. $20 billion or the flow of migrants continues and the flow of drugs continue. Blackmailing America is pretty bold. That said, you have to know someone well to be able to blackmail them. You have to know where the levers are. The elites will want to pay the Mexicans off. The traditionalists know their kids are dying. Obrador clearly knows his audience. Coming up next, Minnesota's Attorney General finds a new excuse for car thieves. What will get blamed next?
We've got to make sure that the automobiles are not so easy to steal so that they're a tempting, attractive nuisance for young people.
You just want to get drunk in public and ignore laws.
We're breaking up with you.
And don't try to apologize and come crawling back. This isn't safe, so we're done.
All right, so that was the ad that Miami Beach put out, literally breaking up with spring break. Their crackdown on the chaos, drugs, and guns and violence worked. A New York Post headline reads, "What New York Can Learn from Miami Beach's Spring Break Cleanup," written by the former mayor of Miami Beach. It reads, in part, "It's a success story from the front lines of the nationwide movement to reclaim cities from criminals. Miami Beach is showing the plentiful benefits of a return to law and order." He's right. And New York needs the help. The New York Post reports New York transit crime is up 50% as murders on the subway surge, up 570 felony assaults in 2023 from 373 in 2019. Miami Beach's current mayor, Stephen Miner, joins us now. Were you surprised how well this plan worked?
Not surprised, but thrilled. We implemented robust measures, law and order, very high visibility of police enforcement. It worked to perfection. I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I proposed many of the measures that we implemented, but thrilled that it actually came to fruition. And so are our residents.
Yeah, I think about your accent, which sounds a little bit like you might be from New York.
Yes.
What would be the lessons to your former hometown that you think made a difference?
I think it's the lesson that everyone should adhere to. Law and order. I don't even say public safety. It's law and order. High visibility, police presence, enforcing the laws, and then making sure those laws are properly prosecuted. It's a pretty simple formula. It's worked throughout, but oftentimes it gets neglected, and we're doing that here in Miami Beach, and it's working.
All right, fair enough. You're, though, a Republican in a very blue city, right? This is Miami Beach. It's a very liberal part of Florida. I'm wondering how those two things mesh.
We're actually nonpartisan here, so I'm actually a registered independent, but it meshes. I'll tell you, our residents, whether you want to call it blue, red, those qualifiers don't mean anything. People here in Miami Beach want to be safe. They want our laws enforced. They've made that loud and clear. Our residents have said that over and over again, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we're implementing. And I'll tell you, I don't get a whole lot of pushback on it. It's what our residents expect and what they deserve.
I bet you don't. I know there are a few nightclubs that were unhappy, but c'est la vie. I think it's interesting the way you're talking about law and order, and also the way you all talked about policing, which it didn't matter what race you were. If you were breaking the law, you were going to have the laws enforced. Minnesota's Attorney General seems to take a very different tact about how to enforce laws and bring some semblance of, I guess, safety to his state. Here he is talking about how to combat car thefts.
We've got to make sure that the automobiles are not so easy to steal, so that they're a tempting, attractive nuisance for young people. And, right now we are investigating 2 major automakers because their cars are dramatically too easy to steal for young people.
Would that be like Miami Beach being said, like, hey, we're going to, investigate the beer manufacturers or something, or try to cut down on alcohol sales rather than go after the people who are actually drinking and causing problems?
Well, I don't have the full context of the quote, but certainly if there's crimes being committed, then we go after them. And one of the things, for example, that I'm trying to implement is we don't generally engage in high-speed police chases anymore. So I'm bringing a pilot project where we have basically GPS launchers from police vehicles to catch these fleeing vehicles. You have to be able to stop the crime. So you could look at other things that may help, but ultimately, if there's a crime being committed, enforce the law and prosecute to the full extent of the law.
GPS launchers. I want to see this. When that happens, let us know, all right?
It's going to happen pretty soon, so I will let you know. Yes, absolutely.
All right. I love it. Mayor, it's good to see you. Thank you very much. Congratulations on your success. Generation Alpha. Yeah, thank you. We raised America's youngest on progressive values starting in 2010, right? This is when progressive values took hold. Now a Los Angeles Times article calls them feral. Whatever happened to Happy Days?
Start eating, Howie. All of you, eat. I'll chalk one up for the pawns.
Every generation believes the one after it has gone soft, but new data shows many kids born to millennial parents can barely function in normal life. That's Generation Alpha, anybody under the age of 14, children of millennials. They are the first generation of the progressive value shift. A new article in the LA Times uses words like feral, illiterate, and doomed to describe them. Joining us now, Robert Pondicia, who's seen the effects of screens on kids, that being iPhones and iPads, as a former 5th grade teacher in the South Bronx and studies these things. Robert, it's good to see you. Thank you. How much of this has to do with phones, you think, and how much of this has to do with what we said at the top, which is a progressive versus traditional value sort of America that this generation has now grown up in?
I'll throw out even another factor, which is COVID, which blew a hole in the education of this generation. I mean, for an entire school year, and in some places, parts of 2 and 3 school years were sidelined or dramatically affected by COVID. So it's not one thing, it's everything. They are growing up in front of screens. They've never known a day in their life where they didn't have a phone in their hand. Their education has been disrupted. I've got some sympathy for this generation. They're facing a lot of tough times.
I'd agree with you with a lot of sympathy. You think about the depression and anxiety statistics, up 50%, 2010 to 2019. So that would maybe even speak to this was happening before COVID. Suicide rate for kids, 10 to 14, tripled from 2007 to 2021. High school girls considering suicide jumped 19% in 2011 to 30% in 2021. High school boys who considered suicide rose just a fraction there. Again, what do we attribute this to? And I'm wondering if it doesn't go deeper than screens.
Well, I reflected on this in a piece that I wrote for a magazine called Commentary about a year or so ago. I reflect on my own childhood. I grew up in very turbulent times in the 60s and 70s. I mean, it was Vietnam, domestic bombings at a rate that would terrify us today. But I don't think kids of my generation had this oppressive sense of fear. We kind of had the sense that, hey, our parents were in charge, we're the good guys. If I think now about the conditions that children grow up, it almost seems that adults are a little bit too willing to put our anxieties onto children. Everything from climate change to political disruption. We think, and I'm speaking as an educator now, we think it's a mark of our sophistication. I wonder if what we're doing instead is creating almost a sense of learned helplessness.
Interesting. Traditional family structure best equips children to succeed. Republicans, 52% agree. Only 16% of Democrats agree. And yet the research shows so clearly that children who have two parents end up doing better, right? They end up in prison less, and they have higher graduation rates and the like. So where's the disconnect there?
I have no idea, honestly. I mean, I'm not a social scientist. I'm an educator, but that data speaks loud and clear. Children who have mediating institutions, if you like, family, friends, church, social connections, are simply more resilient. So at the same time that we're buffeting children with these various forces, those institutions are in retreat. And to the degree to which children have no other support in their lives, those are the children we should really be concerned about.
Yeah, and you think about the traditional versus progressive values divide kind of breaks in that very same way. Robert, it's always an interesting conversation. Thank you. We appreciate your expertise and your dedication to kids. It takes a lot of courage to talk about these issues in the way you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime.
All right. Thank you. We encourage you to sign up for War Notes, warnotes.com, our daily newsletter. It's free every day at 4 p.m. Eastern. You get our thoughts on the most important stories of the day. You can reply. We read them all. And we even reply to a few of your replies, both on social media and on the air. We'll see you for that tomorrow night. In the meantime, here's Chris.